For 40 long years, every time Chris Dawson looked into the eyes of his two daughters, he was reinforcing an elaborate and evil lie about their mother, Lynette Dawson, who'd vanished in 1982. He brainwashed the children, saying she'd run away because she didn't love them. They grew up with broken hearts. But as we now know, this deception was just another example of Chris Dawson's cruelty. The truth is he'd murdered his wife so he could shack up with a 17-year-old school student. Tonight, the eldest daughter, Shanelle Dawson, bravely speaks about her continuing torment. One parent killed in cold blood, the other likely to die in jail. All her life, Shanelle Dawson was fed a despicable lie that her mother had walked out because she didn't love her anymore. But Shanelle now knows the awful truth. Her father, Chris Dawson, is a cold-blooded killer.
To my father, you have broken my heart and violently ripped it into smithereens. Despairing, hopeless, utterly dismayed, betrayed beyond belief. I do still love you, and I always will. Except that now I love and despise you. For now I know the truth of what you've done and of your utter selfishness.
Chris, do you have anything to say?
Why, please?
He'd got away with murder for 40 years, but Chris Dawson's day of reckoning finally came just over a month ago, when his marathon trial ended with a breathtaking verdict.
Christopher Michael Dawson on the charge that on or about 8 January 1982 you did murder Lynette Dawson. I find you guilty. You may sit down.
The mystery of Lynn Dawson's disappearance is a case that's gripped and horrified people around the world. And tonight, we take you inside the police investigation that helped finally deliver a guilty verdict after a 4-decade fight for justice. You took a pretty unorthodox approach.
Yeah, I did. And some people frowned at what I did, and I thought, no, bugger, I'm going to do this.
And for the first time, we can disclose the remarkable revelations Shanelle Dawson gave to police, shedding a new light on what her father may have done on that fateful night. So this has never been revealed before?
No. I believe I saw him shining headlights on a spot near the pool and digging.
So when you say you saw him digging, I mean, your memory is of shovels.
Being pulled out of the back of the car and headlights and digging.
Dawson's was a crime born of betrayal. In 1982, the rugby league star turned school teacher was having an affair with a student we can only call JC, a schoolgirl he groomed and became infatuated with.
He wanted an unfettered relationship with JC, and he couldn't do that if Lynn Dawson was around.
So Dawson callously killed his wife and only days later moved his young lover in. She wore Lynn's clothes, her jewellery, and became a replacement mother for Shanelle and her sister. How do you feel towards your dad now?
Mostly sorrow. Just feel grief. I just feel sad. I wonder if my mum would bring my sister and I down here.
For decades, Shanelle Dawson believed her father was innocent, partly because it was simply too hard to fathom the alternative. But eventually, the weight of evidence swayed her. And while she is now of the opinion Chris Dawson is a murderer, hearing a judge deliver his verdict was still unbelievable.
I heard him say, "Chris Dawson, I find you guilty." I was just in shock. I I just couldn't fathom it, really. It just felt so surreal.
What was the shock? I mean, because you say that you do believe your father killed your mother.
Yeah.
When you're processing it, what couldn't you believe?
It's that this dad that I love actually did do it. And that's now recognised by our justice system.
No one could ever put themselves in your shoes, but I think so many people will go, hang on, this is a guy that killed your own mother and lied to you for decades. So where does the love come from? What's the love side of it from your perspective?
In my little girl's eyes, without knowing or without remembering the other side of it, he was a protector of sorts.
One of the enduring tragedies of this case is the division it's caused within the Dawson family. While Shanelle believes her father killed her mother, her younger sister has long been an ardent supporter of Chris Dawson, along with his side of the extended family.
I'm trying to get away. Get out of the freaking way.
Your mother's been murdered. Your father is in jail. Your sister and your father's family have cut ties with you. How do you cope with that?
A lot of grief. Yeah.
So grief's an interesting word there. Do you grieve for your father?
Absolutely, yeah. I started grieving for him even before I believed he murdered my mum. Just having time, because I went and lived in America for 9 years, and when you're outside of what I believe is abusive dynamics, toxic dynamics, you just see it differently. Yeah, I could see that he was manipulative and gaslighting us all the time. And so once I came back into the family, our relationship changed quite drastically. And my father definitely embodies the survival of the fittest. Fuck everyone else. Just do what you need to do to get what you want. And I feel a lot of anger and rage towards him for being that way. But I simultaneously feel compassion and sadness that he is that way. Should we pick some flowers? Oh, they're beautiful.
Caught up in conflicting emotions and ostracised by her dad's side of the family, Shanelle has focused on the joy in her life. Her 8-year-old daughter, Kiala.
Don't I feel how smooth it is?
Given how tainted her own childhood memories are, Shanelle makes sure her daughter is surrounded by love. Did you find yourself, just sometimes longing for a normal life?
Yeah. Yeah, often, especially Mother's Day and Father's Day, when you see all the happy families off celebrating this person they love, I guess probably what I was missing more was the essence, the idea of a family, of having, most people take for granted that at Christmas time they have a family. Sorry.
It's okay. If you want a break, you take a break.
I'm okay. Most people maybe take it for granted that, at Christmas time they have a family to go back to. I always thought, I wish I had one of those.
I never believed that for one iota of a second that Lynn Dawson would walk out of a house with her 2 beautiful children at home and never see them again.
It was 1998 when Detective Sergeant Damien Loon was given the biggest challenge of his career, the Lynn Dawson cold case.
I smelled a rat straight away. And sometimes you have to go on a gut feeling. The fact that a woman married to a well-known person, 2 young children, and she had difficulty in conceiving children. And for those kiddies to be the age of 2 and 4 when she left home and never came back again, to me was unbelievable. And I didn't accept the reasons that she simply just went away to have some time by herself, as said by her former husband, Chris Dawson. And I wasn't going to let this go because they, Those little ones needed answers.
The wheels of justice turned slowly. 2 coronial inquests pointed to Dawson killing his wife, yet no charges were laid. But as detectives kept hitting dead ends, Shanelle Dawson made an extraordinary revelation, which we can detail tonight for the very first time. When you say you saw him digging, I mean, your memory is of shovels.
Being pulled out of the back of the car and headlights and digging.
Sydney's northern beaches are beautiful. An unlikely place for such a dark and twisted story. Returning to the house in Bayview where she grew up
Yeah, I imagine it's changed a lot since I was little.
is a profoundly bittersweet experience for Shanelle Dawson.
Why is it important for you to come back here?
Just feel like this is the one spot that speaks of my mother the most strongly. All of my memories of her, of my 4.5 years of knowing her, would be mostly here.
With everything that's happened, how do you feel coming back here now?
Oh, deep sadness. Because I think of my mum and how this was her dream. And then I just feel heartbroken that that all crumbled for her and the dream became a nightmare.
Oh, that's the best hugging kiss I've had all day.
The handsome footballer with the picture-perfect family was just a facade. Chris Dawson was capable of pure evil, the ultimate betrayal of his wife and 2 young daughters. He has always stuck to his story of why his wife Lynn vanished. According to Chris, their marriage had been in trouble, and Lynn had upped and left to start a new life with a religious cult. It was a lie he recited in his only interview with police in 1991.
In all that time, she has never ever contacted anybody apart from yourself. Do you find that strange?
Extremely strange. She's an intelligent lady, so I couldn't see being brainwashed by any sector. But I'm at a loss to explain why she hasn't contacted the family.
That was an explanation that always defied common sense, given Dawson had installed his babysitter in Lynn's place just days after her disappearance. Yet he evaded serious scrutiny for years. What do you think of Chris Dawson as a man?
I think he's narcissistic. I think he's told lies to his children. To be told that your mother didn't love you and ran away, that is wrong.
Looks like a mountain of evidence.
It's probably 1% of the file.
The response of police in those critical early days of Lynn's disappearance was woefully inadequate. When Damien Loon first took charge of the case in 1998, all he had was a solitary 1-page missing persons report.
That's what I started with, 1 sheet of paper.
But from those early investigations, a mass of evidence was gathered. Chris Dawson's lies began here at Northbridge Baths in northern Sydney. This is where he took his family on the 9th of January 1982. He claimed Lynn was shopping at the time and would join them down there shortly. But in truth, she was already dead.
Where he says in the afternoon he receives a phone call from Lynn saying that she needs some time away. That was clearly a lie.
It's pretty sad to picture those 2 little girls excitedly waiting to see mum and not knowing that their dad's just killed her.
How do you comprehend that, Tom? Really?
It would take nearly 40 years and a lot of dogged detective work for Chris Dawson to be exposed. One contentious character was central to building the case.
I didn't want to be in a relationship with him. I wanted to get away because I was just a kid. And so, when I tried to get away, it was, he kept hounding me.
JC was the student that Chris Dawson moved into his home and eventually married. Damien Loon interviewed her in the first months of his investigation.
And from that interview, I'd formed the opinion very quickly that Lynette Dawson wasn't just a missing person. In fact, she was a homicide victim.
Do you find it odd that as soon as his wife went missing, he returned you into the family home?
He wanted that all along. Yeah, so I was just installed as the person to take care of his kids.
JC had everything to lose and nothing to gain. And she was candid and frank, and she was a wealth of knowledge to that era that when Lynn went missing.
Do you see JC as one of the victims here?
Absolutely. And my heart goes out to her. And she's been ostracised by the press, other people, finger-pointing. People believe that this young schoolgirl moved into a married family home, should have known better. But someone at that age doesn't. And she was basically taken under and groomed from that day onwards.
I mean, all I know was she'd gone. He said right from word go she wasn't coming back. Lynn's gone, she's not coming back. That's just what he said. And so I believed him.
Despite JC's help with the police investigation, Shanelle Dawson still has mixed feelings towards her former stepmum.
I feel very sad for her. I feel sad that I don't know why she made the choices she did. I know for myself, having babysat and nannied in multiple homes, and thankfully none of those dads ever hit on me. But I know as a 17-year-old, I still would have had the capacity, even with my background, to say, no, that's not okay, you're a married man. I don't blame her, I blame my father. But there's always that part of you that's like, why couldn't you have just said no?
A police dig at the Dawson family home in 2000 was a significant chapter in the investigation.
We intend this morning to dig with the possibility of a body being buried in this area.
They uncovered a cardigan with slash marks, but no DNA was discovered, and the case hit another brick wall. So, in 2013, Detective Loon needed something left field. He decided to put Shanelle Dawson under hypnosis to see whether she could offer up any new information. Did people say, mate, it's a bit nuts?
Yeah. And I go, well, what would you do? And they couldn't answer me.
It was a rare and extraordinary step, one that Shanelle is speaking about tonight for the very first time. So this has never been revealed before?
No.
So what happened when you underwent the hypnosis?
It was like I could feel myself as a 4.5-year-old child again. I could feel the feelings that she felt at the time. It was really pretty profound. I believe I saw my sister and I in the back of a car, of our sedation wagon, and my mother slumped in the front. I believe I saw him shining headlights on a spot near the pool and digging. I believe that he buried her in that spot for that night, and then the next day, when he didn't have us kids, moved her somewhere else.
When you say you saw him digging, I mean, your memory is of shovels.
Being pulled out of the back of the car and headlights and digging. It was like I regressed back to a 4.5-year-old kind of thing, but I was still there and present in the room listening to myself. You know, I guess people could question what's in my subconscious, how much is that created, how much is that actual memory.
Do you think they're true memories?
I think they are, yes.
Perhaps the biggest turning point in this case, though, was the release of the podcast The Teacher's Pet by acclaimed journalist Hedley Thomas.
A cult, a sect, you know, it sounds like, dark forces, you know, snatched Lynn away. Well, she wasn't religious. She didn't go to church. She just wanted to be with her husband and her girls. She wanted to hold it all together. I think her biggest mistake was believing that it was possible.
The evidence in the podcast was damning, and by this stage, Shanelle Dawson was already convinced her father was living a lie. So, after decades of his deceit, she finally confronted him. Is this the last communication you had with your dad?
Yep, this is the last one. I just couldn't hold it in anymore, and then I just hit a wall. I couldn't pretend anymore.
In the end, Chris Dawson was undone by his own web of lies. In a purely circumstantial case, the judge concluded that there was only one possibility, that Chris had murdered his wife, Lynette.
Guys, if you want to just come down the steps, maybe.
Flanked by retired detective Damien Loon, Lynn's brother Greg and his wife Marilyn emerged in a moment of elation.
This verdict is for Lynn. Today her name has been cleared. She loved her family and never left them of her own accord. Instead, her trust was betrayed by a man she loved.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Oh, that's all right.
How are you?
Today, this is what Shanelle Dawson calls family. She and her daughter catching up with the uncle and aunt who are at the forefront of the fight for justice.
How are you? Yeah, I'm going okay. How about you?
I'm okay.
Better now. Now that I've seen you.
Oh,
okay?
You're better now.
Yeah. It's good to have a hug.
With her mother and father now gone, this hug means the world to Shanelle.
How nice is it just to have family here with their arm around you?
It is lovely. I've led a very solo, wild gypsy existence, and family's become more important to me since becoming a mother. So, yeah, I'm glad I still have some. And I'm really grateful for the good family that they are.
Thank you. Always here.
Winning justice for Lynn means the beginning of a new chapter for a family that has been through so much.
We were robbed of her and robbed of her time in the family. But this is the closest we're going to get.
Yep.
And we all have to learn to start life living again. Yeah. So it'll take time.
What do you think this verdict means for Lynn?
It's just too hard to explain after all this time. I find it hard to fathom in relation to thinking about you'll never see her again. I'm getting a little bit choked up here. It's hard. It's very hard, but she'd be happy that we've finally got a result.
People don't quite understand that we're not jumping up and down and celebrating and all that sort of thing. It's just hard to come to terms with after 40 years of not knowing.
The family's mixed feelings are shared by the man who devoted decades to locking up Chris Dawson, Damien Loon.
It's not like being at the footy when your favourite team scores a try and you get up there and, punch the air and it's all good. It's not a winner here. Lynn Dawson is not here. There's a family grieving a loved one who's been found guilty of murder. There are the other parts of the family that have lost their mum, lost their sister. We were just comforted, consoled by the truth.
For so long, Shanelle Dawson wanted to believe her dad wasn't capable of killing her mum. But 4 years ago, she came to the conclusion her father was a liar.
Is this the last communication you had with your dad?
Yep, this is the last one. I just decided to take the leap. It was September of 2018 on Father's Day.
Their final words were sent by text when Shanelle finally confronted her father about his terrible crime, only 3 months before his arrest.
I won't live a life based on lies, nor will I keep subjecting myself to emotional manipulation and control. You have dishonoured our mother so terribly, and also my sister and I through all of this. No more. One day I will forgive you for removing her so selfishly from our lives. Perhaps one day you will take responsibility for your actions and the effect they've had on so many people, most of all your daughters and granddaughters.
His response was breathtaking.
You are clearly very lonely and depressed in the life you have chosen.
You know very little about what was going on in my life or your sister's. It is your adult life, now 41, with a child and without a partner, that has clearly caused this terrible depression. We all, unfortunately, have to live with the choices we make. I own my poor choices, and you never need to remind me of them.
When I got this, I was in disbelief. I could just see through his manipulations, whereas before, when I was in his life, I couldn't see it. There's not even a remnant of apology in there. And it's just, I was dumbfounded. I was so angry. Ooh.
This is the man that killed your mum.
Mm.
But it sounds like, according to him, you're the problem.
That's how he takes responsibility, by deflecting it onto other people. And I was actually very happy in my life, except for that big thing called my father murdering my mum. Just can't comprehend it.
Chris Dawson will have plenty of time to reflect on the choices he made in his life. Due to face a sentencing hearing next month, the likelihood is that he will die in jail. A sad and desperate man with the complete inability to take responsibility for his own actions, to do the right thing by his own daughter.
What impact has Chris Dawson had on Shanelle?
It's hard, isn't it?
It's really hard. I think she's very damaged and she needs to learn to trust again. She needs to know that she is loved. And I think hopefully she'll begin to heal now.
There may be one positive, lasting legacy of the Lynne Dawson case. In New South Wales, no body, no parole laws are now being introduced, denying parole for convicted murderers who refuse to give information about their victims' remains. For Shanelle and Lynne Dawson's side of the family, it's another victory in her honour.
Your dad's still holding a secret. What would it mean for you if he finally came clean?
That would be incredible. I don't think he's going to, personally. I just think he believes his own lies and he won't admit it. He might come to have to admit it to himself after sitting in prison for some time, but I don't think it will be anytime soon.
But does it feel like you can never really get closure until you found out what happened to your mum?
Yeah, definitely. That's still a very big piece of the puzzle. The truth is what, for me, brings peace. So. Big wave.
It's taken a lifetime, but with courage and remarkable resilience, Shanelle is finally able to look to the future, thanks to all of those who fought for justice for Lynne and her two little girls.
I think there's someone you'd like to see who's just popped in. Damien Loon.
Hi, Damien. Hello. How are you?
Oh, I'm good, mate. How are you? Hey. Had a long time.
It's rare someone is thankful to police for locking up a family member, but this is a unique case.
Wow.
Thank you so much for all you've done to help bring this verdict about and for believing in your instincts, and you knew the truth and you didn't give up.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
She loved you.
I know.
I gave you my word that at some stage we'll get a result, and we got one.
You did.
Yep.
Shanelle may never have truly known the mother she lost, but she will never stop honouring her memory. Each day filled with thoughts of what might have been in a life of pain and sadness inflicted by her own father.
If you could speak to your mum for just a moment, what would you say to her?
I do speak to her.
What do you say to her?
I say, I'm sorry and I miss you and I wish you could be here. I tell her thank you for the first 4.5 years of nurturing. I wish that she could hold my daughter and, sing to her or tell her stories or go and do things with her. And yeah, just those things you take for granted, like people call up their mums when they need advice or when they're upset or they've broken up with their partner or to go home for a home-cooked meal. Or it's missed out on all of that. And I have to, at some point, I guess, accept that and move on from not having that.
You got me there.
I know, I can see that.
It's,
So maybe, hopefully, anyone listening to this will go and appreciate their mums just that little bit more and tell them thank you and tell them what they love about them and appreciate all the things they do. Not just mums, dads too.
Hello, I'm Tom Steinfort. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our Extra Minutes segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au, as well as the 9Now app.